The NASCAR Gander RV and Outdoors Truck Series has been around for a quarter century now, and like everything else in the world of NASCAR, it has slowly evolved over the years. When the series debuted in 1995 as the NASCAR Super Truck Series, it ran exclusively on short tracks and road courses. This allowed the trucks to reach areas of the country that the Cup and Busch Series simply couldn't. Tracks such as Flemington Speedway in New Jersey, Evergreen Speedway in Washington State, and Louisville Motor Speedway in Kentucky filled the schedule for the first handful of years that the trucks were around. But as NASCAR entered the new millennium, the trucks found themselves racing at more and more of the same high-speed tracks that the other series have been racing on for many years. In fact, by 2003, only 2 tracks on the schedule were exclusive to the Truck Series, those being Mesa Marin and South Boston. But when 2004 rolled around, those would be gone too. When it seemed like standalone venues were done for, a new track made its way onto the 2004 schedule. Mansfield Motorsports Park, located in Mansfield, Ohio, was a half-mile track that had been around since 1959, initially as a 3/8-mile dirt track. It was paved with asphalt in 1999 and began hosting regional short track racing for several years, until the trucks rolled into town in May of 2004. The first 4 races at Mansfield were on par with what you'd expect from a bullring-type short track. Despite the great racing, the truck's 2008 trip to Mansfield would be its last. And boy, would it be a memorable one. On Memorial Day weekend 2008, the Tough Truckers rolled in for the 7th race of the season, the Ohio 250. The Nationwide and Cup Series were back home in Charlotte for their annual holiday weekend races. The trucks had been there the previous week for the North Carolina Education Lottery 200. In his 7th full-time season, Matt Crafton picked up his first career win in the Truck Series. It would be another 3 full seasons before he'd get a second victory. Todd Bodine and Ron Hornaday would tangle in the late stages of the race, and all eyes turned to Mansfield to see if retaliation was in order. It was an all Bill Davis Racing front row with Johnny Benson and Mike Skinner starting 1-2. They used to do the speed spotlight prior to truck races, and they had some interesting choices on this day. Scotty Crockett was first, as this was his first of only 2 career NASCAR starts. This would also be the first time Dex Imaging would venture into the world of NASCAR sponsorship. Good old John West Townley would make his series debut that day. It would be another 8 years before his career-defining moment, though. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Kevin Wood was up next, a grandson of Glenn and cousin to John, who he shared the ride with in 2008. He would stop racing after this season. Lastly was Jack Smith, a local racer who at one point won 14 consecutive late model races at Mansfield. He'd race in the Truck Series all the way through 2011. The green flag was out and Benson jumped out to the early lead. Mansfield was a short track that was notoriously hard to pass at, especially for the lead, so it wasn't uncommon for someone to hold the top spot hostage. Skinner could stay on his teammate's bumper, but just couldn't find a way to set up the pass. Caution would fly for the first time as Bodine went for a spin on lap 8. This wasn't the work of Hornaday, though, as Crafton simply got loose underneath him and knocked him around. The restart came on lap 13, and Skinner got his nose under Benson to try and take the lead, but the progressive banking allowed Benson to get a much better run off the corner. Hornaday didn't seem to have a problem, though, as he nudged his way past road racing ace Andy Lally for 4th. Lally was driving for TRG Motorsports, and this was only their 2nd year competing in the Truck Series, and they had yet to score a top 10 finish. The leaders soon began putting trucks a lap down, which meant Bodine began feeling the pressure, as he hadn't made up much ground since the restart. He was in serious need of a caution, and well, sometimes things have a way of working themselves out. Scott Lagasse Jr. got sideways under Bodine and backed it into the fence for the second caution of the day. Replay showed Lagasse locked up his brakes getting into turn 3 and lost control. The yellow brought David Starr down pit road from 3rd, as well as a number of others in the middle of the pack. With Mansfield being such a short race and passing coming at a premium, one pit stop was all most teams needed to get to the end. Dennis Setzer had won the previous year's race without stopping at all. Trucks in 2008 did have smaller fuel cells, though, which would make this impossible. Back underway on lap 44, and the gunslinger dropped to Benson's inside as soon as he cleared the lap down cars. He couldn't complete the pass, and that allowed Hornaday to take the second position. Hornaday would attempt to take the lead himself a few laps later. He sent it in hard into turn 3 and slid up into Benson, peeling part of his bumper off in the process. This sent the 23 up the track and allowed Skinner another shot at the lead. The two would make contact the next time into 3, and as a result, the 33 went around and collected the 6 of Colin Braun in the process. That's some mighty aggressive racing early on for 3 drivers who are all in their mid-40s at this point in time. Skinner would bring the remainder of leaders into the pits under yellow. Kevin Wood would win the race off pit road. Shelby Howard would take over the lead by staying out, but Chad McCumbee, who was at the tail end of the lead lap, would lead the field back to green. Y'all remember Chad, right? He played Dale Jr. in that cheesy 3 movie that ESPN made in 2004. Anyways, Howard would quickly put McCumbee a lap down. Hornaday would take his Camping World Chevy behind the wall as the damage was too crippling to continue. He had entered the race as the points leader. Under commercial, the 4th caution would come out. Scott Speed would be spun by Brendan Gaughan and end up including several other trucks, including Benson. This would force Benson to pit. Rick Crawford would be assessed a rough driving penalty for spinning the 23 at the end of the wreck. Setzer was out front for the restart on lap 76. David Starr would attempt to take the lead on lap 80, but would end up punting Setzer instead. It looked like Starr just slid up on corner exit and got into the 18. The contact was minimal, but there was legitimate concern as to whether he'd get the black flag. But NASCAR let him slide. Work continued on Hornaday's truck as Starr got the restart. Bodine was back up to second by this time, and behind him in the 07 truck was a driver by the name of Sean Murphy. Murphy was a New Zealand native and making his first Truck Series start in nearly 2 years. Things got clogged up in the back of the pack as the trucks with fresh tires tried making their way forward. Modified Series ace Donnie Leah moved past Ted Musgrave for 6th. Leah, driving for TRG, was only his 8th career Truck Series start, with a best finish of 9th coming at Martinsville 3 races prior. Stacey Compton gave Landon Castle a lesson in moving someone out of the way. Castle was still a Hendrick development driver at this point in time. A couple laps later, Crafton would try to give him the same kind of shove, but Landon wasn't keen on the idea this time around and paid him back in the next corner. This would rip the fender off of Jack Sprague's truck. Simultaneously, Crawford would spin to bring out the caution. Under caution, Ray Dunlap showcased the day's craftsman tools of the trade with a 5.5 amp all-in-one cutting tool. Back underway just shy of the race's halfway point as Starr looked to lead his 45th consecutive lap. Benson noses ahead of the leader to position himself on the tail end of the lead lap. Now all he needed was a caution. Castle would make more contact with his competitors, this time Brian Scott. Benson would get his yellow on lap 136 when Tim Cowan slid into the wall. Cowan only made one more career Truck Series start after this, though he raced in the Xfinity Series as recently as 2018. 107 laps to go at the restart, and Starr quickly clears lap traffic. Bodine tries his best to make a move as Starr is still within his range, but he can't quite get enough of an opening to get by. Shane Sieg slaps the side of Jack Smith's 63 truck as he attempts to move by. Sieg was making his first career start in the 51 truck. Kyle Busch had already won twice in the truck that season. Just under 100 laps to go, and Eric Darnell punts Gaughan into turn 1. Lally and Scott Speed would pile in as well. As with so many incidents on the day, Darnell tried to make his truck stick on the low lane to no avail. Under caution, Hornaday limped back onto the track. Mathematically, he could only make up one spot in the running order, but in a season-long points battle, remember when those were a thing? Every point matters. 91 to go for Starr at the restart. No lap traffic on the inside to manage this time, and once again, Bodine managed to get a fender under the 11 truck, but he couldn't quite get enough of a run off the corner to get by. Setzer had made his way back up to the 7th position after his earlier spin. Things looked relatively calm throughout the field, and despite the high volume of cautions during the race, this would go green all the way until the end. Just kidding. Did you think they weren't going to wreck again? Deja vu for Darnell in the 99 as he sends Lagacy Jr. for a ride and collects Smith in the 63, and gone once again. Amazingly, Lagacy would still be able to finish the race. Sieg's crew chief Richie Waters decided to surrender their top 10 spot on lap 168. Waters was convinced that no one up front would be able to make it to the end on fuel. I guess he was thinking there wouldn't be any more cautions or something. Green again on lap 173, Starr and Bodine had made their last trip to pit lane all the way back on lap 39. Skinner and third had been in on lap 50, and none of them had any intentions of coming back into the pits. Howard in the 13 truck was cruising along in fifth. He'd run a clean race up to this point and was in search of his first career top 10. Speed would head to commercial break with 70 laps to go. Do you think they'd be under caution by the time they came back? If so, you guessed correctly. Castle's eventful day continued as he dropped the bumper bar on the track. John West Townley offered the assist by running into the back of him. The top three narrowly avoided running over it as it slid down the track. Restart happens under commercial break, and we catch the leaders as they come down the back straightaway a full lap and a half after taking the green. Hey, even Speed Channel had its flaws, folks. Leah made his way past Howard to crack the top 5, but before he could attempt to get past Terry Cook for 4th, Braun would bring out another yellow flag. This was the day's 11th caution in just under 200 laps. 48 to go now, but don't get comfortable because here comes caution number 12 as Setzer's bid for a second straight Mansfield win literally went up in smoke. 41 to go for Starr at the line, and caution number 13 immediately follows as Wood and Sieg pile into each other. Guess Richie Waters regrets pitting now, huh? I don't know about y'all, but I'm getting a little tired of all these yellows.
But wait! There's more!
Of course there is. So as you can see, David Starr had absolutely dominated the race to this point. Prior to this race, he had only led one lap at Martinsville between his other 4 starts. 33 laps away from a sure victory for Starr as the race resumed. Leah got very aggressive from the 5th position as he quickly passed Cook and soon after muscled his way past Skinner for 3rd. Stop me if you've heard this one before. Brian Scott brings out the yellow flag. Crafton was responsible for spinning out the legend himself. Hashtag 40 forever. Another restart with 24 to go, and Starr got his best restart of the day as he doesn't allow Bodine to get a nose under him into turn 1. Leah would take advantage of this and push his way past the 30 into the 2nd position. Would the modified Ace be able to pose a significant threat to Starr's dominant performance? Trucks continued to lean on one another as the laps wound down. Gaughan had a tire rub, but pitting was no longer an option, and he was determined to get it through the final few laps. Starr had opened up a sizable lead, and if things continued green, surely he'd have the win all locked up. But fate was not on his side. Crafton gave Gaughan the all-too-familiar bump in turns 1 and 2, and an astonishing 15th yellow flag was out on the day. Fun fact, though, the track record for yellow flags in the Truck Series was actually 18 back in 2006. So here's the scenario. David Starr, the short track ace who had absolutely dominated the race, having led non-stop since lap 80, versus defending Whelen modified champ Donnie Leah, looking for his first ever Truck Series win. Add in Leah's aggressiveness on the restart and Bodine waiting in 3rd to pounce, and this was all setting up for an interesting finish. The final green flag was out with 7 to go, and Starr got another incredible launch into turn 1. Leah and Bodine searched around for the perfect line to try and close the gap, but it seemed like it might be too little too late. Leah makes an incredible gain on Starr with just 2 laps to go. I'll let Rick Allen handle the rest.
Closing the gap now on the 11 of David Starr. It's going to come down to the final lap when they come out of turn number 4. David Starr is going to see the white flag. One more lap around Mansfield Motorsports Park. Donnie Lee is right there. Here he goes. He makes contact. David Starr keeps it straight. They're side by side. 3 wide down the backstretch. Donnie Lee out in front. Todd Bodine down on the bottom. As they come out of 4, Donnie Lee has the edge. Donnie Lee will win at Mansfield.
And just like that, Donnie Leah picks up the victory, and he does so in incredible fashion. Nobody was getting past Starr without using the old chrome horn, and Leah executed it perfectly. This would actually end up being Leah's only career win in the Truck Series. It was also his only top 5 as well. Despite his dominance that day, Starr would never again find victory lane in the Truck Series, as he hasn't made a start since 2013, though he does still continue to race in the Xfinity Series. As for the track itself, Leah's thrilling win would be the final Truck Series checkered flag to fall at the Ohio Oval. In 2010, the track would be closed following an ARCA race in July due to tax issues. A few years later, it would be reopened as Mansfield Motor Speedway, and in 2017, it would be returned to its original state as a dirt track. A number of dirt racing series would visit the track over the next few seasons, but in October of 2019, the track was put up for sale, and no events were scheduled for 2020. The Truck Series has evolved quite a bit in the years since, and though they do have a handful of tracks unique to the series itself, including fellow Ohio dirt track Eldora Speedway, long gone are the days of minuscule paved bull rings dotting the schedule, with Mansfield holding the distinction of being the final one. And that's the story of the 2008 Ohio 250, a wild and chaotic affair that truly represented the end of an era. Thanks so much for watching episode 4 of Remember This Race. My name is Tyler Head. You can follow me on Twitter at TylerHead18. You can also subscribe to my podcast Up to Speed on Apple Podcast. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I've been loving all the feedback that I've been getting from you guys, and I look forward to hearing more. Thanks so much once again, and I'll catch you next time.